So Paulina, I don't know, you might not even be called Paulina, because sometimes I know that we get my son on Zoom and he's got my husband's name, and so who knows, but I wonder if it's as hot wherever you are as it is where I am. It's pretty hot today. Unusual example of summertime, the most severe of Minnesota summertime temperatures showing up in early June, which is very unusual. This is New York City temperatures here. Well, hello there, D-Drill. D-Drill's phone, welcome. We're gonna have a very intimate gathering this evening, or late afternoon, to talk about women in history. I think we'll wait a couple more minutes just in case anyone's having technical difficulties, and then we will get started. Oh, your name is Paulina. I just saw your chat. Hi, Paulina. Yay. If you would like to unmute, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing. We're going to introduce the show, and I'll sing a little, and then I'll unmute you guys or give you the opportunity to, so we can talk a little bit before we get into some more performance.
We'll get started in about a minute here. If people show up after that, then they'll pop in.
Okay.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. I hope you're in an air-conditioned space. We're very glad to be here today with the Ulm Public Library and to have Elisa Korenne joining us for a special concert. She's an award-winning songwriter known for her original songs about oddballs in history. She left New York City in 2006 to be an artist in residence in rural West Central Minnesota. And since becoming Minnesotan, she's appeared on Gull Lake TEDx, was commissioned by the Perry Public Television to create songs and appear in many music documentaries. And she began her music career in 2001 after leaving her role at an international development nonprofit that you co-founded called Geek Corks. That sounds really interesting. Okay. And her debut book, autobiographical and really good, 100 Miles to Nowhere, An Unlikely Love Story, was published in 2017. So we're excited to have you.
Thank you. And welcome to our two stalwart Zoom attendees. Thank you for being here. And what I'm going to do is I'll sing a little bit and then we'll talk a little bit. Here we go. I am woman, hear me roar in numbers too big to ignore. I've heard it all before, and I've been down there on the floor, and no one's ever keep me down again. Oh yes, I am wise, but it's a wisdom born of pain. Yes, I've paid the price, but look how much I've gained. If I have to, I can do anything. I am strong, I am invincible, I am woman. So that is a song, I Am Woman, by Helen Reddy, written in 1971. And it's very interesting. That was kind of the beginning of what we think of as the women's movement, some people would say. One question people ask me sometimes is, why do we need to talk about women in history right now? Why is that relevant? And I find that I sometimes don't think it's that relevant either until I start looking at some of the facts and figures, and they're quite surprising to me. So I'm going to ask you guys a question and see if anyone is willing to venture an answer, and that is, you can unmute yourself or you can write in the chat. Does anyone remember when women were given the right to vote in the United States? Anyone know? Welcome, Jan. I'm asking a question and see if anyone knows. Yes, Paulina's got it. Paulina with the win, 1920.
Yes.
That
it was
is
after the end of World War I.
Yes, and that is only 101 years ago. I mean, that is not long if you think about the fact that this country was founded in 1787. Well, 1776, I guess it depends. So 1776, we're less than halfway did women have the right to vote. So the next question I have for you is, how much money, so for every dollar a man makes right now in 2021, how many cents does a woman make? Does anyone have any guesses? You can chat or unmute. For every dollar a man makes, how many cents does a woman make? Okay, I see no guesses. I will tell you, 84 cents. So we're still not quite at the point where women are making $1 for every dollar a man makes. Okay, next question. How many women are seated in the Senate right now? There are 100 senators. How many of them are women? Any guesses? Anyone know the answer? That's 24. And women right now make up 50.52% of the US population. So we're at 24% of the senators for 50.52% of the population. So I find that very interesting. And these are things that I didn't really look into until I was preparing the show. And I see that it is just so relevant still to be talking about women's roles separately and to address them. And one of the ways that I'd like to begin this presentation is with a song called Who Was I? And it's about a woman named Susan Fernier Brown. Susan Fernier Brown was a Minnesotan. She lived in Browns Valley in the 19th century, and she was married to a man who was one of the founders of Minnesota, Joseph Brown, and her son, Sam Brown, was a hero in the Sioux Uprising of 1862. He was kind of Minnesota's Paul Revere. And she herself was part Indian and part white. And so I always thought she must have been a fascinating experience, a person who had a fascinating experience in the world at the time that she lived. And so I decided I wanted to write a song about her. And so I went to learn more. I went to Browns Valley. And the amount of information I could find about her was extremely limited. And that's because she was a woman, and nobody writes down the stories of women or people of color as much as they write down the stories of men, especially white men in history. So I decided to write the song anyway, and I titled it Who Was I? And it's dedicated to everyone who gets lost to history for reasons of race, gender, sexuality, or any other reason. Who was I? Father was French Canadian and Dakota Yanked to name. My mother's grandfather was the great Chief Red Wing. My husband was one of the men who built Minnesota, and my son was a hero in the Sioux Uprising. Joe met me when he was married to wife number 2. He nursed me back to health when I was shot. He moved when with me and had 7 children. It took him 15 years to tie the knot. They wrote about my husband, my father, my son. Then they were done. So who was I? Yeah. Who was I? Oh, who was I? Oh, tell me something about my life. Oh, tell me something mattered in my life. Lived in a world where there was Indian and white. Do you know if I was both or neither? Lived in a world where families were mixed and where marriages sealed business interests. I lived in a time of confusion when 2 cultures fought for a hold, as white pioneers built new lives and the Indians tried to save the old. They wrote about the wars, the treaties and guns. Then they were done. So who was I? Yeah. Who was I? Oh, who was I? Oh, tell me something about my life. Oh, tell me something mattered in my life. What was it like for me? Oh, I can't tell ya. I'm long gone. You can learn that in the uprising of 1862, I saved myself by claiming Indian blood. You can learn my husband bought me a piano from New York. He had no chance to hear me play before he died. You can learn I was a woman of note years ago, and that I lived till I was 85. They wrote about my husband, my fathers, my sons. Then they were done. So who was I? Woman, wife, mother. Who was I? Indian, white mix. Who was I? Oh, tell me something about my life. Oh, tell me something mattered in my life. Tell me something mattered in my life. That's the story of Susan Freneer Brown. And now I'd like to move to another unique group of individuals, and these were the Hormel girls. So who here has eaten Spam?
Spam.
Spam!
Spam's great.
Woo!
My kids love Spam.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question. Does anyone want to share their favorite other Hormel meat product besides Spam? I think Spam's probably my favorite too. Yeah. Oh, chili. Yeah, chili con carne. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hormel girls. So way back in the 1940s, J.C. Hormel, the president of the company at the time, decided that he wanted to market his meat products the best way he knew how. And he came up with a really novel marketing idea. He decided to hire the women who had just come back from serving in the military in World War II in the Drum Corps. So he took these women and he put them into a performance group, and they sang songs, and they put on these big dance performances where they would play the instruments and sing the songs. And they traveled all over the country selling Hormel meat products by day and performing by night. And they got so popular that they had their very own radio show on CBS, tuned in every week. And I loved hearing that story. And so, of course, it had to become one of my stories about extraordinary, lesser known women in American history. So this is their story. I left the war with a pink slip in my hand. It was back to the kitchen till Hormel gave me a chance. He said, military ladies, come and drum for me. Military ladies, find out what we can be. We were 60 service girl, drum and drew bugle corps. Jay's the Hormel thought we could do some more. The drummers learned to dance. Then the new girls tried out and he gave them a chance. He said, you can perform and then sell door to door. And during the day we go store to store singing, hey ho, how do you like it? Hey ho, gotta try it. Spam and dinty more, delicious canned meat galore. We'll take it today tonight, come out and give it a go. The Hormel Girls Caravan Orchestra Show. 35 cars, what attention catching. We drive up in pairs, our dresses all matching. Comportment and style, 60 hours a week. Dance instructors keeping track of everything we eat. No tan lines can be seen. It's a small price to pay to live a service girl's dream, yeah. Hey ho, how do you like it? Hey ho, gotta try it. Spam and dinty more, delicious canned meat galore. We'll take our show to the radio, so tonight turn it on and give it a go. The Hormel Girls Caravan Orchestra Show. We broadcast on CBS from Hollywood and Vine. Our scripts are written for us. We plug every Hormel line. 5 commercial breaks will tell you what you need to know about every Hormel product. You'll hear it on our show, yeah. We girls would be showing on a Saturday night. Then we'd be sailing before every flight. We drive 2 by 2 with a plastic bag filled with dummy cans and sell the Hormel brand. Mr. Manager, how your products doing? Tickets to our show should see sales improving, yeah. Hey ho, how do you like it? Hey ho, gotta try it. Spam and dinty more, delicious canned meat galore. We'll take our show to the radio, so tonight turn it on and give it a go. The Hormel Girls Caravan Orchestra Show, yeah, tonight come on and give it a go. The Hormel Girls Caravan Orchestra Show. So I want to tell you about, well, first I'm going to ask you, who do you think is the most famous Minnesotan right now? Anyone have any ideas? Anyone on the chat or want to talk? I mean, I think some people might say Prince, or George Floyd at this point. Back in the 19th century, the most famous Minnesotan was actually a woman. She was a woman from Pelican Rapids, which is in west central Minnesota. And she was both famous and infamous. And in fact, she was known as the Minnesota Blizzard. When the blizzard appeared in Washington, D.C., the entire Minnesotan congressional delegation would go into hiding. The Minnesota Blizzard was born Maria Jane Quiggle in Pelican Rapids, and she married a man named Blaisdell, who had served in the Civil War. And Maria believed fervently that her husband deserved more of a pension because he was injured in that war. And she believed that she deserved more of a pension from for the nursing that she had done during that war. And so she became so enamored with the idea of getting a pension that she would discuss nothing else. And she spent 20 years of her life trying to get the money she felt were owed to her and her family. She would discuss nothing else. She besieged every congressman and senator to present a bill raising the pension, and she was so belligerent and so determined that she became a terror to anyone forced to have anything to do with her. Now, Maria started by making trips from Pelican Rapids to the Twin Cities, and that was hard enough to win sympathy for her cause. But when she wasn't successful, she decided it wasn't her cause that was at fault. What was really the problem was she was talking to the wrong people. She needed to go to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. But there was one problem. She didn't have money for train fare, but she was the Minnesota Blizzard, so she was going to find money for train fare. So what she did was she walked into the offices of the local railroad, and she demanded that they provide her a ticket to get her to Washington, D.C. Now, if it were you or I, we would have been laughed out of this office, but we are not the Minnesota Blizzard. By the time the Minnesota Blizzard had finished talking to the poor individual behind the counter, they were so happy to hand her a free ticket to get her out of their office. So she got her first ticket and she got on the train and she went to Washington, D.C. and knocked on the congressman's door. And the first congressman opened their doors to her because they hadn't met her yet. And they never did that again. By the time she had started to make a few trips back and forth, well, what ended up happening was she didn't have train fare to get back to Minnesota either. But she told the congressman that, and they were very happy to provide her the tickets that she needed to get home so she would get out of their hair. So officials on both sides of the railroad start playing a game of ping pong with her. The people in Washington, D.C. start giving her money so she could get back home, and the people in Minnesota give her money so she could get back to Washington, D.C. After dozens of trips back and forth, she started to get a reputation, and she was nicknamed the Minnesota Blizzard by the national press for how virulent her attacks on Congress were. Now, on one of her trips, she got caught in the famous Johnstown, Ohio flood. Now, many people died during this flood. Maria did not die. She simply had some luggage damaged, and she simply added her suffering to the list of many grievances for which she demanded the government pay her, and continued her lobbying. In 1893, a group of Maria's fellow citizens in Otter Tail County decided that they had had enough and they were going to get rid of her legally. So what they did, and this was something that you could do back in the 19th century, and probably you still can, although it's a little harder, they went to the Otter Tail County Court and petitioned to have Maria Blaisdell declared insane. They alleged that she was carrying a pistol, had threatened several persons, and shot at an individual, and worst of all, of course, had assaulted a noted attorney with her umbrella. Well, the court found in favor of the prosecutors, and she was remanded into custody and sent to the St. Peter's facility for the criminally insane. By the way, you're hearing the bell from the bell tower across the street here. So Maria, in what was perhaps one of her most successful lobbying efforts, sued the hospital for false imprisonment. So she found an incredible loophole in the law. She discovered that the testimony of the two physicians who had declared her unfit had not been sworn in, and therefore was hearsay, and therefore inadmissible, and therefore she shouldn't have been imprisoned in the hospital for the criminally insane. And so she was freed against the will of every single individual in the legislature, and they quickly sewed up the loophole in that bill, but not before Maria Blaisdell went right back to lobbying Congress for the money she felt were her due. Now, what was very interesting was that she continued her battles with Congress and the government to her dying day, but her husband, William Blaisdell, whose was her focus for so many years, he died in 1895. Now, Maria remarried. And what's really interesting to me is I don't know whether the individual that she married had actually spent any time with her or not. But what's particularly notable is that within 24 hours of actually marrying the man, he ran as fast as he could across the Canadian border, never to be seen from again. Maria was laid to rest in an unmarked grave in November of 1918, and she had made herself such an aggravation that she was one of the most famous Minnesotans of her time. So that's a very unusual role for a woman to take in history. I have a song now about another role that was delegated to women in history, and that is that of the seductress or vixen. And this song is dedicated to all of those women in history. And I particularly was thinking of people like Mae West when I wrote this song. I like to leave a trail of broken hearts behind me. That way I know I'm loved and not ignored. I like to see them lining up to find me as I sneak out by the other door. I like to watch them scrambling for attention while I'm aloof and laissez-faire. I like to hear them bidding their affections while I'm the one who leaves without a care. See them look at you and then make them look again. Make them not want to turn away. If you've got them by the second glance, you've got in them to stay. I like to leave a trail of broken hearts behind me. That way I'm sure I'm loved and not ignored. I always try to keep one man beside me and change them daily so I don't get bored. Don't give them anything they say they want. In fact, it's when you don't they stick around. Don't loosen your hold till you're getting gone, then leave them while they're still bound to you. Always keep something hidden. Don't give it all away. Keep them in their thrall, line them up and watch them fall. You're sure to make their day. I like to leave a trail of broken hearts behind me. I like to leave them weeping in the aisle. I always leave them wondering how to find me, ready to follow me for miles. I wouldn't counsel you to try my patience. My affection for you wouldn't survive the blow. I suggest you learn some toleration, and you might postpone the time when I will go. See them look at you and then make them look again. Make them not want to turn away. If you've got them by the second glance, you've got in them to stay. Always keep something hidden, don't give it all away. Keep them in your thrall, line them up and watch them fall. You're sure to make their day.
I feel like I want to be clapping, but
I know it is a strange experience to be performing when it's like you can't see anyone's faces. Yeah, this is actually my first Zoom concert, ladies and gentlemen, and it's unusual. I know most performers spent the last year and a half performing. I spent the last year and a half being a mom and a kindergarten teacher and a preschool teacher. So it was a very, as it was for all of us, a very unusual year. So it's very fun to have you all here on my first and maybe last, we hope, because we're going to move on to in-person concerts, Zoom concert. So I wanted to play you, this is the song that took me on the road towards writing these songs about unusual people in history. And it started on a trip, a solo driving trip to Montana, where a friend of mine had said, you have to stop in Butte. It's this really interesting old mining town. And I ended up choosing to go to the most unusual, eclectic, oddest place I could find in Butte, which happened to be the Dumas Brothel Museum. The Dumas brothel had been the longest running brothel in American history, opened its doors in 1891, closed them in 1982, and for many of the years of its existence, it was co-owned by the local police department, which was very convenient for everyone involved. Now, what I learned about, and the person whose story really stuck with me, is a woman named Eleanor Knott. Eleanor Knott was a prostitute at this brothel, and she worked her way up to being a madam. And what's so interesting to me about that choice of becoming a prostitute and then becoming a madam is throughout history, often a woman's only way to have economic power or control over her economic status was to sell her body. And so that is the choice that Eleanor Knott made. And what gives this choice, which many women made throughout history, a really unique twist is that at the very end of her life, what happened was she fell in love with one of her clients. So she's a madam, she falls in love with the client, and the client promises to leave his wife and take Madame Eleanor Knott away from this life. And she chooses to go with him. She chooses not to continue being empowered in her own economic circumstances and to marry one of her clients, except he never shows up. And so then she kills herself. So it's a very strong commentary on the life that she was leading. And this is, I just couldn't help but write her story into song. This is called Butte. Dusty Bibles lead to dirty lives, so I left mine behind after Mama died. Broke her apron and I broke her jars. Only thing we agreed on was that tears scar. Dusty walked out on Tommy a week before our wedding day. Rode a coach to a place where a girl could make her own way. Traded gingham for silk and rouge, farmhouse walls for the fenceless route. See the beauties in Butte, Montana. They're the prettiest girls I know. Enjoy the beauties in Butte, Montana. Save up the pennies for the show. Took my dowry to Jesse's on the Strip. Rented a room with a timer and a bed. Tallied in pencil on each time my bedposts dug deeper in the floor. Checkered curtains over window grime, backdoor exits keeping time. 5 years of 15 minutes socked away. Emptied my mattress and I bought old Jesse's place. See the beauties in Butte, Montana. We're the prettiest girls I know. Enjoy the beauties in Butte, Montana. We'll park you up after the show. Claimed the corner room and made a corner life. Matched girls to minors, and then I realized the corners are edges of rooms with walls. Broke my timer between my high heel and the floor. Told the foreman we could marry the next day. Sat on my suitcase and waited for him to take me away. I could see another room, 4 walls high. Shined up my pistol and I let it cry. See the beauties in Butte, Montana. We're the prettiest girls you'll find. Enjoy the beauties in Butte, Montana. We'll park you up after the mines. Save your pennies for the show. Well, we're going to go from seductresses to the first woman to run for president. Does anyone know who the first woman to run for president was? Any guesses? And then the second question I'm going to ask you to guess on, and you can use your chat or unmute, is do you know what year the first woman ran for president? No guesses. It was not Hillary Clinton, although many people might assume that. The first woman to run for president was a woman named Victoria Woodhull, and she ran for president in 1872. What's more remarkable to me is not just that she ran for president in 1872, but who she was. Victoria Woodhull was born in poverty, and her father sold her to the local doctor to be the local doctor's wife when she was 15 years old. She was abused, she was beaten, and she found her way out of those circumstances to become an actress, a prostitute, a psychic, and then to own be the first woman to own a brokerage house on Wall Street, where she made a fortune, and then the first woman to run for president. I was so moved by her story. Oh, and the other thing that I need to tell you about her is that she got very well known, another woman who became infamous, because of her views on love. And she had this view that women were allowed to enjoy themselves in marriage, which was something that was absolutely revolutionary for the time. So she became reviled for that point of view. This song is about her. It's called Love to Love. They called me Snake, an impudent witch. To say free love would save us made me Satan's bitch. In 1866 could be a feminist, so I earned myself a fortune and ran twice for president. Married 3 times and slept with many others. I slept with hallowed reverends and I slept with free love lovers. When men can sleep around while saying how much women need them, the first thing women need is sexual freedom. I love to be loved as I love when I love. I'm gonna be loved as I love when I love. If you wanna love as I love when you love, brokerage house to see what we could get. Selling stocks like telling future, I made a fortune out of it. I love to be loved as I love when I love. I'm gonna be loved as I love when I love. If you wanna love as I love when you love, you gotta be loved as you love when you love. The first woman to own a paper, I told Congress women should vote. I formed the Equal Rights Party, took my campaign on the road. I'd be president for tax reform and better education, anti-monopoly laws and sexual emancipation. Some men didn't like me, some men couldn't get enough. I had to move to England, speaking out here got too tough. With living sexual freedom causes public outrage. The truth is I'm too many years ahead of this age. I love to be loved as I love when I love. I'm gonna be loved as I love when I love. If you wanna love as I love when you love, you gotta be loved as you love when you love. You gotta be loved as you love when you love. You gotta be loved as you love when you love. Well, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be able to perform for you. So I'm going to move on to the story of another woman who was a journalist in the 19th century. So 1 year after Jane Helm started editing the St. Cloud Visitor, she had made people so angry that they had stormed into her offices and thrown her printing press into the river. They believed that this would silence Jane on the topics of abolition and women's rights. They were wrong. Jane Helm was born Jane Grey Cannon in 1815 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she became one of the most pioneering women journalists in the 19th century. In 1836, she married a man named James Helm, who was a terrible match for our strong, independent woman. For example, in 1839, Jane learned that her mother was dying of cancer, and of course, she wanted to go home and spend time with her mother. James refused because he believed that a wife was there to obey her husband. Well, Jane went anyway, of course, because she was Jane. And so James sued Jane's mother's estate to get control over his wife. Well, Jane stayed with him for a little longer. She started writing a column for women's rights and abolition. But the problem was that many of the individuals who believed in abolitionism, the end of slavery, didn't also believe in women's rights. So her column got canceled in the Pittsburgh paper. So she simply decided to write her own paper, and she called it the Pittsburgh Saturday Visitor. And she edited it for 5 years until quarrels with her husband made her think it was time for her to leave. And so she did. She moved to be where her sister was at the very edge of the frontier, St. Cloud, Minnesota. And her fame came to St. Cloud with her, and people had learned that she was a newspaper woman, and so they asked her to take over this failing newspaper, which led to some trouble with local politicians. Sylvanus Lowry was a powerful politician whose name you've never heard of because he truly believed in slavery, and he wanted to create a community of slaveholders in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So Jane ran articles criticizing Lowry and his cronies for their pro-slavery views. Lowry publicly attacked Jane Helm, so Jane began to help Lowry's opposition. Well, Lowry was not very happy. And this was a time when retaliation was not just in words. So Lowry and his cronies stormed her press offices, took her printing press, and threw it into the Mississippi River. Well, Jane was actually terrified. She feared for her life. She wrote a will, she hired a bodyguard, and went out to protest the dismantling of her press. She was able, with help, to repair the press, and she started printing criticism of Lowry again, and Lowry now sues her. So to prevent the case from going to court, Jane finally, she makes an agreement with Lowry. She says she will never again print any criticism of him in the St. Cloud Saturday Visitor. Well, the next day, she shuts down the visitor offices, goes down the street into a set of new offices, and starts a new paper called the St. Cloud Democrat, and continues to print whatever she wants about Mr. Lowry. Jane eventually becomes a Washington, D.C. correspondent. She worked for the New York Tribune. She interviewed President Lincoln. and she became one of the most well-known journalists of her time. During the Civil War, she helped nurse the wounded, and then afterwards started another newspaper called The Reconstructionist, which, although its offices were burnt down 3 times, she never again was threatened with losing her press. I sometimes wonder if there are any pieces of that press still in the Mississippi River. A hop, skip, and a jump from where both men and women can study journalism at St. Cloud State. And I like to think that Jane would be proud. So this next song talks about women at work, and well, I think you all have heard this song before. Tumble out of bed and stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition and yawn and stretch and try to come alive. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the street the traffic starts jumping with folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. Want to move ahead, but the boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes a man is out to get me. They let you dream just to watch them shatter. You're just a step on the cross man's ladder, but you got dreams that never take away. In the same boat as a lot of your friends, waiting for the day your ship will come in. The tide's gonna turn and it's all gonna roll your way. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking, no giving. Mother, use your mind and they'll never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. So I just learned that that song came from the movie. So the movie started first, and the movie happened, I learned this on a podcast, I forget which one, but the movie happened because Jane Fonda happened to, upon a protest run by women who were the clerical workers in the offices, and learned that the women working in offices were underpaid and poorly treated. And Jane Fonda decided that she was going to use her power in Hollywood to do something about it. So she got a production company to make a movie called 9 to 5, and got Dolly Parton involved and wrote this song, which we all think of as a classic now. So I see that it's 5:15, and I know that we all can get some Zoom fatigue. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a couple more songs, and then we'll call it good. I'm going to play you, the next song I want to play you is a song that I was inspired to write by reading the memoir of a woman named Rachel Kaloff. Rachel Kaloff was a mail order bride from Russia, and she arrived in North Dakota. She was hoping for a better life and discovered a very difficult life as a pioneer on the prairie. A young Jewish girl in the Russian powder keg, abandoned by my father. My mother was dead. Unwanted but to care for my brother's 5. I took another woman's passport for a one-way ride from a hard life to a new land. I became a mail order bride. First saw my husband on the New York dock. Came to take me to his North Dakota farm. Separate berths on the endless train. We disembarked on a featureless plane. Hard land for a new life as a mail order bride. The women sang, men beat time on tin pans. My mother-in-law put a flour sack over my head. On my wedding day I was blind, at least they couldn't see me cry. New land, same hard life for a mail order bride. One room winter shack with my husband's parents, brothers and wives. Chickens under the bed, calf in the corner, cruel cold from the cracks. 100 winds couldn't relieve the stench. I prayed the gray clouds, I begged the gray skies for winter to end. Hard life in a new land, just another mail order bride. Women sang, men beat time on tin pans. My mother-in-law put a flour sack over my head. On my wedding day I was blind, at least they couldn't see me cry. New land, same hard life. Hard land for a new life. Hard life in a new land for a mail order bride. So that song is actually was made into a video, a mini documentary by Prairie Public Broadcasting out of Fargo. And you'll see me, if you look it up on YouTube, you'll see me dancing around the prairie with a guitar, which was fun. I'm gonna close up this show now. Make sure that no one is zoomed out. We're going to open it right at the end of this for some questions and answers or some comments. And then we're going to take a break. And those of you who are interested in joining me for the character writing class, Making Characters Come Alive in History, that is going to be at 6:15. And there's a separate registration link. It's a different Zoom registration. And so Leroy can send that to you. And so I'm going to play one more song, and then is there anything you'd like to say before I close up, Leroy?
Were you going to have questions after the song? Or?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll wait till then. That's good.
Great. Awesome. So the final song I'm going to play you is one of my favorite songs to end with, and it's about one of my favorite characters. This is a woman named Dorothy Malter, and she's much better known as the root beer lady of the Boundary Waters. She moved from Chicago to an island in the Boundary Waters area, no running water, no electricity, and she managed, despite all that, to have ice cold root beer for her for tourists who were traveling around the Boundary Waters, and she became a beloved. And Leroy says it's good root beer. She became a beloved fixture in the Boundary Waters, and once it became a canoe wilderness area, she was kind of grandfathered in. She was allowed to kind of hang out there, but she wasn't allowed to sell her root beer anymore. So normally I teach my audiences to sing along with this song, and I'm not going to do that because I can't hear you. So, but I am going to invite you. You're welcome to sing whatever you like along in your own rooms. And feel free to join in if you'd like to. Live in the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota. I live the life I want, and I wouldn't change it one iota. I live here most of my life, here on a lake called Knife. I live here mostly happy, mostly alone, in my strong woman in my wilderness home. And I'm all about root beer, da-na-na-na-na, root beer, da-na-na, root beer, da-na-na-na-na, root beer, huh. Winter freezes the lake to ice. I cut the ice from the lake with a knife. Stack the ice in the ice house in huge ice mounds. Each cube weighs over 100 pounds. I cover the ice with sawdust. I cover the sawdust with moss. People come and help me, but I'm the boss of my root beer. Da-na-na-na-na, root beer. Da-na-na, root beer. Da-na-na-na-na, root beer. Huh. I carry hundreds of glass bottles over hundreds of miles of trail. I wash hundreds of root beer bottles in Knife Lake with a brush and pail. Carry gallons of lake water to pour in vats of root beer mix. I pour root beer bottles for the summer fix. I sell them root beer, da-na-na-na-na, root beer, da-na-na, root beer, da-na-na-na-na, root beer. Huh. When the law says I gotta move, 'cause my home's now a park, I fight the law and I stand my mark. But when I don't win the fight, My friends stand up to the government's might. And now I can live here all my years. I just can't sell any root beer. But I still need the money. So if you'd like to pull up a chair, the donation jar is just over there. Some folks try and find me, some come accidentally, but they are covered with sweat and they'll take anything they can get. 2 rupees per customer, 20 minutes or less. Why I have those rules, I bet you can guess. There won't be enough rupee, da-na-na-na-na, rupee, da-na-na, rupee, da-na-na-na-na, rupee. Huh. So thank you all for joining me, and thank you to the New Ulm Public Library and to the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund for helping to support this. If there are any questions or points that you would like to make or things to share, feel free to come on your audio or make a chat notation. And Leroy, anything to say while we're waiting, if anyone wants to say anything? Oh, we're losing people. I guess nobody wants to talk.
I wanted to say I really enjoyed the story about the reporter in St. Cloud. Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, listening to it, it's very empowering for women. And I think she was an empowered woman and she just stepped out of that comfort zone and moved ahead. And I think that's where sometimes we get caught up today is people want to be treated the same way, but sometimes you need to take that extra step.
What a good point. What a good point. I have so much respect for the women who did what they did back then. I mean, the amount of pressure they must have faced, pressuring them to go back to not speak up was so large. It's amazing, but you make an excellent point there. Beth says, so much power in these strong women. I agree wholeheartedly. I love these stories, and I'm humbled by the amount of effort and inner strength and courage it would have taken them to do what they did.
I certainly learned a lot, and I thought it was really great. Of course, the Minnesota blizzard had me laughing.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you laughing, Leroy.
Well, I didn't want to break up your songs. But just really amazing what these women accomplished for the circumstances that they were in, and the trials that they dealt with. And so I just thank you so much for sharing their stories, because stories like that deserve to be remembered. So, but, I suppose if does anyone have any other questions at all? So I, of course, want to give a big thank you to the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund for making this concert possible. And we look forward to doing more things like this, but in person. And I will be sending out a survey about your experience with the concert after probably Monday morning, because it's Saturday. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And if you're going to be coming to the writing workshop, I'll be sending out the link to that in just a little while. And thank you again so much, Elisa, for your great music.
Thank you for inviting me. You guys be
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you guys for being here. The link for the next piece be coming.
Yep.
Yes. Okay,
Yes, it will.
They're coming.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.